Let's tackle one of the biggest questions out there. Why are we conscious? I mean, why is there an inner experience at all? We're going to dive into a really fascinating new theory that takes a crack at this, but not with some abstract philosophy. No, it starts with the one thing we can't possibly ignore, our own bodies. I mean, just think about it for a second. It's not just that your brain is processing information. There is something it is like to be you, right now, in this moment. Why does that rich, subjective, inner world even exist? And this right here, this gets to the very heart of the problem. A thermostat, it detects heat, and it reacts. It's processing information, sure, but you feel warmth. There's this quality to it, this experience, that we assume the machine just doesn't have. So what's the real difference? For a long time, a really popular analogy tried to explain it. You've probably heard this a million times, right? The idea that the mind is like software, and the brain and the body, well, that's the hardware it runs on. It sounds so clean, so logical. It's basically a modern kind of dualism, separating the mental stuff from the physical stuff, just like code is separate from a computer. But here's the thing. The paper we're exploring today argues that this whole metaphor isn't just a little off, it's completely, fundamentally wrong. It's a basic misunderstanding of how things in our minds actually work. See, the whole software myth just falls apart when you really look at how a computer works. Software isn't some ghost floating around in the machine. It's just a physical state of the hardware. The code you write gets translated down layer by layer until it's just a sequence of ones and zeros, physical instructions telling the hardware what to do. There's no separate software thing, it's all just physics. And the same goes for the mind. It's not floating above the body, it's what the body is doing. Okay, so if we're throwing out the whole software model, where do we even begin? Well, we get physical. We have to start with the actual living, breathing organism. And this is the critical shift in thinking. The mind isn't some executive in a corner office giving orders to the body. It's the other way around. The mind evolved for one core reason: to serve the body's most basic need, which is to keep itself alive. Its entire job is to help this biological machine navigate a pretty dangerous world. And this one simple idea, that survival is job number one, it leads to a truly wild conclusion about how we perceive everything. It basically flips our whole idea of objective reality completely upside down. The paper puts it in this really provocative way. Death grounds meaning. What does that mean? It means the constant threat of just not existing, that's the ultimate anchor point for everything. It's the reason anything matters at all to a living thing. This gives birth to the most basic, primal kind of perception, which is called valence. Long before an organism knows what something is, it knows whether that something is good for it or bad for it. Is it attractive, something I should move toward, or is it repulsive, something I need to get away from? This isn't a high-level thought. It's a raw, gut-level feeling. And get this isn't just some philosophical idea. The theory actually argues that it's the most efficient way for an organism to learn and survive. Mathematically, it's just way more effective to start with a simple good for me, bad for me signal than it is to build a massive, complex library of neutral facts about the world. Feeling isn't a luxury, it's a life-saving shortcut. So here's the mind-blowing part. Our entire objective reality is built from the ground up, out of these subjective feelings. The first bits of data an organism gets are just attraction and repulsion. Over time, it learns to recognize patterns in those feelings. And eventually, a very specific, complex pattern of good and bad signals gets bundled up and slapped with a neutral label, like the color red. Objective facts are built from subjective feelings, not the other way around. Okay, that's a lot to take in. But if everything just starts as this big chaotic sea of good for me and bad for me feelings, how on earth does a stable, coherent I, a self, actually pop out of all that? It all boils down to learning one of the most basic distinctions imaginable, the difference between a change in the world that I caused versus a change that just sort of happened on its own. It's all about learning cause and effect with yourself as a potential cause. So let's picture a simple little learning agent. It sees someone put on a raincoat, and then it rains. It sees this happen again and again. A really basic learner would just connect the dots and conclude, hey, putting on a raincoat causes rain, right? It's confusing correlation with causation. Classic mistake. But a smarter learner starts to build a better model of the world. It learns to identify different agents. It realizes that there's another being, Alice, and then there's me. Now it can figure out that Alice putting on the coat and the rain starting are probably both effects of some hidden cause, like the weather changing. And it knows its own actions are separate from all of that. And that very mechanism, the one that distinguishes I did this from that just happened, that's what this theory calls the first-order self. You can think of it like a causal tag. It's the brain's way of stamping an event with my action. And this, right here, is the functional origin of a stable, consistent self. And this is where it all comes together in a really cool way, because this whole framework allows us to take on one of the most famous, most mind-bending puzzles in all of philosophy. I'm talking about the philosophical zombie. The idea is this. Could you have a being that looks and acts exactly like a conscious person? It talks, it laughs, it says it's in pain, but on the inside, there's nothing. The lights are on, but nobody's home. No feeling, no experience, just darkness. Well, according to this theory, the answer is a hard no. A philosophical zombie is impossible, and the logic is just beautiful. Here's why. To survive, you must be able to tell your own actions apart from everything else happening. That's a critical function. That function is what creates this first-order self. And here's the kicker. The paper argues that this functional mechanism, this causal self-tag, is what we call phenomenal experience. The function of being an I that does things is inseparable from the feeling of being an I that does things. You can't have one without the other. So by tying consciousness directly to the physical need for survival, this theory suggests that feeling isn't some weird magical extra that got tacked onto our brains. It's the most fundamental way a living thing makes sense of the world in order to stay in the game. It's a path toward a real science of consciousness, one that's based on the hard facts of life, not on zombie fiction. So let me ask you, how does it feel to know that your own inner world, your very sense of self, might just be the most elegant solution to a survival problem?